was just 17, bright, ambitious, weeks away from high school graduation. Tetorsha Tierra Williams had plans: college, a career, a life far beyond the south side of Chicago. But before she could even walk the stage, she made a decision that stunned her family. She dropped out, moved in with a man twice her age, a man with a prison record, 6 kids by several women, and not a single stable job. His name was Kevin Scott. To outsiders, it made no sense. But to Tierra, it felt like love, or at least the closest thing she'd been offered. And so she traded lectures for lullabies, classrooms for chaos. She became his 7th baby mama, and at just 19, his wife. By 21, she was working double shifts to help raise not just their child, but his other children, too. Meanwhile, Kevin? He was posting jokes on Facebook, flirting, disappearing for hours, smiling in selfies while Tierra sank deeper into exhaustion. Still, she held on, because she believed in potential, because she thought maybe she could change him, because she wanted her son, Christian, to grow up in a family. But in 2024, something shifted. Tierra got tired of pretending, tired of being the only adult in the relationship, tired of holding up a man who never stood up for her. So, she planned her escape. She and her mother had big plans, a 3-flat apartment in Chicago where Tierra could start over. Her name on the lease, her rules, her freedom. She told Kevin it was over. But Kevin didn't walk away. He waited. And on May 9th, 2024, just as Tierra was packing for her new beginning, he pulled a gun. And in front of their 5-year-old son, he ended her life. Then he ran, scratched off his face tattoo, hid for over 2 months. But no disguise could erase what he did. Why did a teenage girl give up everything for a man who had nothing to offer? Why did she stay so long? And how did walking away become the most dangerous choice of her life? Before her name ever made headlines, before the heartbreak and the headlines, there was just Tierra, known to those who loved her as Bobo. Born on June 28, 1996, in Chicago, Tetorsha Tierra Williams came into the world alongside her twin sister, Tetorsha. 2 girls, side by side, raised in a big, loud, loving family on the city's west side. Her childhood wasn't perfect, money was tight, responsibilities came early, but what she lacked in luxury, she made up for in love and determination. There was never a doubt that Tierra was going somewhere. She had that kind of light. She went to St. Malachy Catholic Elementary, where teachers remembered her for her quick wit and wide smile. The kind of kid who could make a whole classroom laugh without even trying, and then ace a quiz 5 minutes later. Tierra wasn't just smart, she was sharp, observant, charismatic. One of those kids who seemed older than her years, like life had already handed her some early lessons. By high school, she was attending Our Lady of Tepeyac. There, she stood out not just because of her energy, but because she genuinely cared. About her grades, her friendships, her future. Teachers liked her. Friends leaned on her. She was the kind of girl you could call at 3 a.m. with a problem, and she'd be up, talking you through it. Even as a teenager, she carried herself like someone already holding the world on her shoulders. And in many ways, she was. See, girls like Tierra, black girls from working-class Chicago neighborhoods, they grow up fast. Way too fast. There's even a name for it, adultification bias. It's when young girls are treated like grown women long before they should be. Expected to be strong, to carry burdens, to help raise siblings, to hold the family down when things get shaky. Tierra felt all of that, and still showed up smiling. While some girls her age were worried about prom dresses or social media trends, Tierra was working jobs, first under her aunt at MB's kitchen, later at KFC, stacking what little money she could to help out and dream bigger. She wanted college. She wanted something more. Not because it was easy, but because she knew it was the only way out. Her goal? to give her future child, whenever that happened, a better life than she'd had. That's the kind of thinking she carried around at 17. And even with all the stress, the pressure, the long hours and expectations, she never lost her spirit. Tierra was known for opening her home to friends who had nowhere else to go. People describe her like she had a healing heart. She didn't just survive, she gave. Constantly. Quietly. But here's the thing about girls like Tierra. The world sees their strength, but not always their vulnerability. And that strength can become a magnet. A target. For people who don't want a partner, they want someone to fix them. Someone to carry their baggage. Someone to keep giving until there's nothing left. Tierra didn't grow up soft. She grew up smart, tough, and incredibly loyal. But even the strongest girls have blind spots. And in 2013, right around the time she should have been planning college applications, her path veered. Because that's when Kevin Sh0t entered the picture. Kevin Sh0t didn't stumble into Tierra's life. He watched. He waited. He calculated. By the time they met, Kevin was in his early 30s. A grown man. He'd already been in and out of prison. Already had a growing list of children by multiple women. He was a man whose past didn't just follow him. It walked into every room before he did. But instead of working on himself, Kevin did what predators do. He went looking for someone younger. Someone impressionable. Someone who hadn't lived enough life to see him coming. Tierra was 17. Still technically a child. But like many girls her age, she was treated like a woman, especially by older men who saw her maturity as an invitation. She had responsibilities, independence, and that determined energy Kevin could smell from a mile away. And for a man like him, that wasn't intimidating. It was appealing, because it meant she could carry the weight he never wanted to lift. He started off charming, funny, confident, complimentary. The kind of man who knew how to say the right things. Who made her feel seen, chosen, even special. That's how it always begins. Not with control, not with threats, but with flattery. You're different. I've never met anyone like you. You're more mature than the girls your age. That last one, it sounds like a compliment, but it's a warning. It's grooming 101. Kevin made her feel like an adult in all the wrong ways. He fed her validation like breadcrumbs, leading her closer to a version of herself that wasn't real. One where she could fix him. She could hold him down. She could build a future out of his broken pieces. And at that age, when you're still figuring out your worth, it's easy to confuse manipulation for love, control for stability. He probably didn't talk much about his record, or the women before her, or why a man in his 30s was spending his time chasing high school girls instead of building a life. What he did talk about: dreams, struggles, loyalty, maybe even God. He made her feel needed. That's the trap. Because predators like Kevin don't just chase beauty or youth. They chase girls who give, girls who nurture, girls who are used to stepping up when no one else does. And Tierra? She was all of that. He isolated her slowly, emotionally first. It's not always don't talk to your friends or stop seeing your family. Sometimes it's just, they don't understand us. They're jealous. We don't need anyone but each other. That's how grooming works. It's quiet, patient, calculated. By the time you realize what's happening, you've already made sacrifices, cut ties, defended someone who wouldn't do the same for you. People around Tierra were concerned. They saw the age gap, the control, the history. But when you're 17 and you believe you're in love, red flags look like challenges, like things you can work through. Especially when the person you're with keeps convincing you that you're the only one who truly gets them. Kevin didn't just pull her away from college. He pulled her into his world, a world of instability, chaos, and emotional debt. And Tierra, with all her strength, stepped in believing she could clean it up. She thought she was saving a man, but she was walking straight into a trap. By the time Tierra turned 19, the picture was clear, though not many people wanted to look at it. She wasn't in college. She wasn't chasing her dreams. She wasn't living the life that bright-eyed, driven teenage girl once imagined. She was married to Kevin Sh0t, and she was the 7th woman to have his child. Let that sit for a second. 7. Not 7 kids. 7 different mothers. 7 different women who, for one reason or another, ended up carrying the emotional, physical, and financial weight that Kevin refused to lift himself. But Tierra wasn't like the others. Not because she was naive, but because she went all in. She wasn't just another name on his list. She was the one working full-time. The one cooking, cleaning, managing chaos, and stretching paychecks. The one helping raise kids from his other baby mamas. The one still trying to build something resembling a home out of the pieces he'd left lying around. And Kevin? He was out there smiling on social media, posting jokes, uploading selfies, turning his feed into a highlight reel while Tierra was out here holding the real-life mess together. Friends remember seeing him online, flirting, liking other women's pictures, putting up a show for the internet. Meanwhile, Tierra was exhausted. She was barely out of her teens, and she was parenting, providing, problem-solving, playing peacekeeper in a blended family that wasn't her own. And the worst part? She still believed in it. Not because she didn't know better, but because she wanted better. See, that's something people miss when they ask, why didn't she leave? They assume weakness. They assume desperation. But more often than not, it's about survival loyalty. It's about believing that maybe, just maybe, the person you've invested everything in will grow into the version of themselves they keep promising to be. It's about being so emotionally committed that starting over feels scarier than staying put. Tierra believed in family. She wanted her son to have a father. She wanted to give Christian what she didn't have, consistency. And like so many women in toxic relationships, she clung to the potential, not the pattern. Kevin told her things would change. And on her best days, she believed him. Because when you're deep in emotional debt, when you've already sacrificed years, energy, self-worth, leaving doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like failure. So she stayed. She went to work, took care of Christian, tried to be a co-parent to Kevin's other children, covered bills, covered emotions, covered for him. And through it all, she held her head high. But behind closed doors, the reality was harsh. Tierra was doing everything. And Kevin? He wasn't growing. He wasn't helping. He was coasting on her effort, her loyalty, her belief in him. This wasn't the life she dreamed of. This was the life she was managing, because walking away would have meant starting from zero with a child, no savings, and a man who likely wouldn't take no for an answer. She was stuck in a cycle so many women know too well, trying to make a life work that was never built for them to thrive. Something in Tierra shifted. Maybe it was the long nights coming home from work to chaos. Maybe it was watching Kevin drift further into his own selfishness while she carried the weight of their life. Or maybe it was just time to stop surviving and start choosing herself. By early 2024, she wasn't the same girl who once thought love could fix everything. She was a mother now, with a 5-year-old boy watching her every move. And that changes things. When you realize your child is learning what love looks like by watching you, you start paying attention to the environment you've accepted. Tierra wanted peace. Not the kind that comes from pretending, the kind you build for real. A place of her own. Walls she could paint. A front door she could lock without fear. A life where Christian could just be a kid, without absorbing the tension that had become routine. And her mother? She saw it too. Trinetta McClure had been watching her daughter give and give and give until there was barely anything left. So she stepped in, not with words, but with action. The plan was a 3-flat apartment building in Chicago, a space Tierra could share with her family, where she'd have her own unit, her own independence, but never be alone. It wasn't just real estate, it was a rescue mission, a new start, a quiet exit from a life that had been wearing her down, piece by piece. Tierra was ready. She started preparing, quietly. This wasn't going to be some dramatic breakup. No screaming. No big blowout. She knew better than that. She'd seen how Kevin reacted when he felt cornered. So she played it safe, kept things neutral, made plans during her shifts, talked to her mom in hushed tones, moved like someone who'd studied escape routes before. She was focused on the future now, on her son, on finally living instead of enduring. But Kevin was watching. He didn't know every detail, but he could feel her slipping away. He could tell she wasn't clinging anymore, that the loyalty he'd fed on for years was drying up. That kind of shift? It's invisible to outsiders, but to a controlling partner, it's like blood in the water. Still, Tierra moved forward. She had options now, a family plan, support, and something to look forward to that wasn't rooted in fixing someone else. On May 9th, 2024, she made her decision clear. She told Kevin the relationship was over. No yelling, no chaos, just honesty. She was done. It was a mild spring afternoon in Chicago, calm skies, a breeze in the air, just cool enough for a jacket. Nothing about the weather hinted at what was about to happen inside a small home on the 1400 block of South St. Louis Avenue. At 3 p.m., the call came in. But let's back up. That morning, Tierra Williams had plans. She was focused, collected. She had told her mother she was finally going to do it. End things with Kevin. The apartment was happening. Her name was on it. She was ready. And more importantly, she wasn't scared anymore. She wasn't storming out. She wasn't starting a fight. She was simply leaving, and she was telling him to his face. Somewhere between late morning and early afternoon, Tierra and Kevin spoke. What was said between them inside that home will never fully be known. There's no recording, no text messages. But what we do know is this. Tierra told him the truth. That she was moving out. That the relationship was over. That she and Christian were starting fresh. And Kevin Sh0t did not take it well. This wasn't a breakup. Not to him. It was a loss of control. A crack in the image he worked so hard to maintain. She wasn't just walking away. She was choosing herself. And that's something abusers can't stand. At some point during that conversation, maybe minutes after she said the words, maybe after he begged or blamed or threatened, he pulled out a gun. There was no struggle reported. No signs of a fight. Just violence. Sudden. Cold. Tierra didn't stand a chance. He shot her multiple times in the kitchen of her home. And standing there, just feet away, was their 5-year-old son, Christian. Christian saw everything. The woman who loved him most in the world. The one who tucked him in at night, who worked late shifts to buy his favorite snacks, who dreamed of a home with his name on the mailbox, gone. And Kevin? He didn't stay. He didn't call 911. He didn't try to help. He didn't hold his son or even look back. He ran. And Christian? That little boy? He was left alone. In that house. With his mother's body. We don't know how long he sat there. How long he cried, or if he knew what to do. He was 5. And the only adult in his world had just been taken away in front of him. Sometime after 3 p.m., Chicago police received a call for a well-being check. Whether it was a relative, a neighbor, or someone who hadn't heard from Tierra, we still don't know who placed it. But the officers who arrived at the home walked into a nightmare. There was no confusion about what had happened. Tierra was found on the kitchen floor with multiple gunshot wounds. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Christian was there, alive, but forever changed. The Cook County Medical Examiner's Office confirmed Tetorsha Tierra Williams as the victim, a young mother, only 28 years old, a woman who had fought to escape the cycle, only to have that freedom stolen in the most violent, personal way imaginable. Kevin Sh0t was gone. No weapon left behind. No confession. Just a child, a body, and silence. The investigation kicked off immediately. Flyers, social media alerts, community calls for justice. But by then, Kevin was already on the run, trying to disappear, trying to erase what he'd done. Tierra was gone. Her son was traumatized. And the man who did it, Kevin Sh0t, was nowhere to be found. News of her death spread fast. Family, friends, neighbors. Entire blocks of Chicago's North Lawndale neighborhood reeled with disbelief. This wasn't just another crime headline. This was personal. This was a daughter, a sister, a coworker, a friend. And in the middle of it all, a child who had witnessed something no one should ever see. But what hurt even more than the loss was what didn't happen next. Kevin wasn't arrested that day, or the next, or the week after. He vanished. And for over 2 months, Tierra's family lived with the unbearable weight of not only losing her, but knowing the man who murdered her was still out there. They didn't rest. They couldn't. While investigators worked behind the scenes, Tierra's mother, Trinetta McClure, and other family members took to social media, news outlets, anywhere they could get attention. He's out there, they said, and we're not safe until he's caught. What they didn't know was that Kevin was doing everything he could to disappear. According to sources close to the investigation, he attempted to remove or alter a distinctive face tattoo, an identifying mark that had been all over public photos. It was a desperate move by a man who knew his face was on wanted bulletins, being passed around both online and off. Some say he changed locations, burned through favors, and stayed off digital platforms. He was a ghost. But ghosts don't last forever. On July 18, 2024, more than 2 months after the murder, authorities located and arrested Kevin Sh0t. He was taken into custody and charged with first-degree murder in connection to Tierra's death. The moment his arrest hit the news, there was a wave of mixed emotion, relief, exhaustion, fury. Because the question on everyone's mind was simple. Why did it take this long? And more than that, how was he able to get this close to her in the first place? You see, this isn't just a tragedy. It's a failure of the systems that are supposed to protect women like Tierra. This wasn't a random act. It wasn't unpredictable. Tierra had tried to leave. She had a plan. She had family support. And still, it wasn't enough. Because there's something fundamentally broken in the way we talk about, handle, and respond to domestic violence. The truth? The most dangerous time in an abusive relationship is when the victim tries to leave. That's when control slips, when power is threatened, and too often, the abuser escalates. Tierra's story is tragic, yes, but it's also common. Every year, women across the U.S. are murdered by current or former partners after leaving. And the warning signs? They're there, but they're rarely taken seriously. Kevin had a violent history. He was significantly older. He had a pattern of failed relationships and children across multiple households. He isolated Tierra, financially leaned on her, made her the caretaker while he wandered. These are not quirks. These are patterns. So why wasn't there more intervention? Tierra had no criminal record, no history of instability. She was employed, active in her community, a mother trying to do right by her son. And yet, the system didn't protect her. There was no restraining order, no safety protocol, no domestic violence advocate on speed dial. Because unless there's a bruise, a 911 call, or a paper trail, the system stays silent. And in that silence, Tierra was left to figure things out on her own. Now, Kevin Sh0t is behind bars, awaiting trial. But justice? That's more than a court date. Justice would have been Tierra alive, with her son, in her own apartment, hanging up curtains and making dinner and watching him run around on the floor she finally called her own. Instead, her family is left grieving in public. Her son, Christian, is left without a mother. And the rest of us are left asking, how many more Tierra Williamses will there be before something changes? The aftermath of Tierra's murder is more than just news clippings or headlines. It's a loud, ongoing reminder of what happens when we ignore red flags, delay action, and minimize control as relationship drama. It wasn't drama. It was danger. It was a pattern, and it was preventable. Christian is 5. He should be learning to read, climbing jungle gyms, drawing pictures of stick figures with big smiles and sunbeams in the corner. But instead, he's carrying something no child should, the last memory of his mother being taken away right in front of him. He watched it happen. And no matter how many therapy sessions, how much love his family gives him, that moment is forever stamped on his life. Not just the trauma, but the silence that followed. The sirens. The questions no 5-year-old should have to answer. Now, Christian is being raised without the one person who protected him most. Tierra was more than just a mother. She was his safe place. And that safety is gone. Her family is left to rebuild. Emotionally, financially, publicly. They've had to mourn under the spotlight, relive their pain in interviews, answer questions they shouldn't have to explain. Because the world didn't just lose a victim, it lost a voice. A vibrant, determined woman who had finally begun choosing herself. But here's the part we cannot ignore. Tierra's story is not rare. This wasn't a one-off. This wasn't unpredictable. This wasn't the tragic climax to a fairy tale gone wrong. This is what happens every day to girls and women who are preyed upon, worn down, and told to just make it work. To women who give everything for men who see them as disposable. To women who are raised to believe that sacrifice is the cost of love. Kevin Scott didn't just slip through the cracks. He lived there, and no one patched the hole. Not society, not policy, not community structures. He moved from woman to woman, life to life, with no accountability, until it was too late. So ask yourself, what allowed him to keep doing this? What silence protected him? What apathy gave him space to move on, while women like Tierra kept paying the price? Because this wasn't just a crime of passion, it was the slow unraveling of a girl's future by a man who never earned her love, but took it anyway. If you're in a relationship that feels more like survival than peace, or you know someone who is, speak up. Reach out. Interrupt the cycle. Because sometimes, it's not violence that kills. It's silence. If this story moved you, if it made you think, don't let it stop here. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a case that matters. Because the more we talk about stories like Tierra's, the fewer names we'll have to say next time. This is True Crime Undercover, where we uncover the truth, honor the victims, and ask the questions that justice alone can't answer. Stay sharp, stay aware, stay human.